Welcome to Wisdom of the Bible channel. Have you ever wondered if Yahweh was known only to Israel, or could it be that his name, his presence, and his worship were known by people long before Israel existed? Think about it. Before Moses climbed Mount Sinai, before the 10 Commandments were inscribed in stone, and even before Jacob was called Israel, there were quiet echoes of Yahweh. Who were these early people who recognized his name? How did they end up worshiping the God we connect with, Israel? And what does this reveal about God's larger plan for humanity? A plan that crosses every border, every nation, and every era. This is the secret of Yahweh's worship before Israel. And believe me, what you learn here might shift how you view the Bible forever. So before we begin, take a moment to reflect on these ideas and share what sparks your interest. We appreciate hearing from you, and your insights can help deepen our discussion. Let's explore this mystery together. All right, let's begin with the core question. Who is Yahweh? You might recall the striking scene in Exodus chapter 3, where Moses stands before the burning bush, filled with fear and uncertainty. He asks a very human question, "What is your name?" And God responds with a phrase that still fills us with awe, "I am who I am." Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. These words are profound, everlasting, unmovable. Then, in the very next verse, God commands Moses, "Say this to the people of Israel, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you." Exodus chapter 3, verse 15. Now stop and think about that for a moment. Did you notice that? The God of their ancestors was mentioned. In other words, it wasn't the first time anyone had heard of Yahweh. The name Yahweh, coming from the Hebrew verb besabe, is more than a simple title. It points to a reality that always was, is, and will be. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. The name Yahweh did not start with Moses at the burning bush. In fact, many people recognized it before Moses ever stood on sacred ground. Surprised? You're not alone. Let's travel back, far back, to see where this holy name appears in astonishing settings. So, if Moses wasn't the earliest to hear Yahweh's name, then who was? Let's step back through the pages of the Bible, all the way to Genesis. Did you realize that Yahweh's name shows up in Genesis chapter 4, verse 26? This is way before Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. Back then, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. Genesis chapter 4, verse 26. That term Lord in Hebrew is YHWH, which is Yahweh. Hold on a second. This happened in Enosh's era, and he was Adam's grandson. Let that sink in. Only a few generations after creation, humans were already invoking Yahweh's name. Now the question is, how did they learn his name? Who showed them to call on Yahweh? Is it possible that God was already revealing himself to sincere hearts? Take Genesis chapter 12, verse 8 as an example. When Abraham reached Canaan, he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Again, that's Yahweh. Abraham wasn't discovering some unknown God. He was calling on a name his family already recognized. This leads us to a remarkable possibility. Could Yahweh worship have survived through flawed generations? Could devoted people have kept his name alive, even when others embraced idols? This suggests a strong truth. God was never far away. He kept reaching out, kept calling, and there were always souls who answered, long before Israel came into being. Let's dig deeper, because there's so much more to uncover. Now let's discuss a truly mysterious figure. He appears suddenly in Genesis chapter 14, then vanishes just as swiftly. Have you heard of Melchizedek? Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. Genesis chapter 14, verse 18. Hold on. A priest of God Most High before Moses, the law, or the Levitical priesthood? Yes, Melchizedek was already devoted to Yahweh. And here's the remarkable part. Abraham acknowledged it. And Melchizedek blessed Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. Genesis chapter 14, verses 19 to 20. That's correct. Abraham offered a tithe to this enigmatic priest. So here's the question. Where did Melchizedek originate? Who showed him Yahweh, the Most High God? The scriptures never say he was in Abraham's lineage, and he wasn't an Israelite. Yet he plainly worshipped Yahweh. Hebrews 7 layers on more intrigue. Melchizedek is without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life. Hebrews chapter 7 verse 3. Some thinkers propose he could be a Christ-like appearance, hinting at Jesus to come. But here's what we do know. Melchizedek shows that Yahweh's worship was real and vibrant beyond Abraham's home. Incredible, right? It reveals that God's work wasn't confined to Israel alone. He was already planting truth far and wide through priests, rulers, and believers who recognized him. Let's explore a few more cases, because Melchizedek is not the only one. Next, there's another unexpected person who revered Yahweh, Jethro, the priest of Midian. Ring a bell? He was Moses' father-in-law, yet not an Israelite. He resided in Midian, but look at how the Bible portrays him. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. Exodus chapter 3 verse 1. He was a priest indeed, but not of some idol. Jethro served the true God, even before Moses was given the law. And when Jethro came to Moses in the desert following the exodus from Egypt, notice this. Jethro rejoiced for all the good that the Lord had done to Israel. And Jethro said, "Blessed be the Lord Yahweh, who has delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that Yahweh is greater than all gods." Exodus chapter 18 verses 9 to 11. Wait a moment. He actually speaks God's personal name, Yahweh. Not only does he acknowledge him, but he worships him and offers sacrifices. Then Jethro brought a burnt offering and sacrifices to God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat a meal with Jethro before God. Exodus chapter 18 verse 12. This is significant. Jethro, though not an Israelite, was already serving Yahweh, and nobody scolded him for it. He was embraced by Israel's elders. What does that imply? It shows us God was active beyond Israel's boundaries. He was recognized, worshipped, and revealing himself to those in far-off places. It had nothing to do with race or nationality. It all depended on a heart yearning for truth. Jethro strongly reminds us that Yahweh's influence was never confined to a single people. His account proves the worship of the one real God was spreading softly like a lamp in the night. And yes, there's more proof yet. Let's keep moving. Think about this. Could one of the Bible's oldest books, maybe older than Moses, offer profound insights about Yahweh, even though its main figure isn't an Israelite? That book is Job. Job did not hail from Israel. He lived in Uz, far from Canaan. Still, his entire story revolves around his bond with God. Consider how Job speaks of him. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Job 1 verse 21. Yes, that's Yahweh once more. The Hebrew term for Lord there is YHWH, God's holy name. And all through the story, Job speaks of God not as a faraway power, but as a close, just, and supreme Lord. He yearns to talk with him, present his defense, and boldly says, "I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth." Job chapter 19 verse 25. That's striking. What does it reveal? Job knew God intimately, not as some local God or one among many, but as the living Redeemer. And interestingly, Job's companions, even with their mistakes, also spoke about God. They grappled with ethical and spiritual dilemmas, much like we do now, showing that awareness of Yahweh, a moral, personal maker, wasn't locked away in Israel. Folks throughout the ancient world knew about him, discussed him, and adored him. That shouldn't come as a shock. Remember, God formed every person, not just one group. Romans chapter 1 verses 19 to 20 supports this. For what can be known about God is plain to them, for his invisible attributes have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world. Romans chapter 1 verses 19 to 20. Yahweh's mark is visible all around, so whether it's Job, Melchizedek, Jethro, or Abraham, the same pattern appears. God was showing himself, and individuals were answering his call. Now let's make it personal and see why this is important for us right now. Next up is a person who truly stretches our assumptions, Balaam. He's a perplexing biblical character, living outside Israel with doubtful intentions. Still, he manages to hear Yahweh directly. Let's dig deeper. And God came to Balaam and said, "Who are these men with you?" Numbers chapter 22 verse 9. Notice that? God approached Balaam in direct speech, much like he did with Abraham, Moses, and the prophets. Balaam then says in verse 13, "On to your own land, for the Lord Yahweh has refused to let me go with you." Numbers chapter 22, verse 13. Pause for a moment. That's amazing. Balaam, a foreigner from Pethor by the Euphrates, modern Syria or Mesopotamia, is using God's covenant name, Yahweh. Not just a generic God or El, but YHWH, the intimate holy name revealed to Moses at the burning bush. So how did Balaam recognize Yahweh's voice? How did he learn to heed it, at least at first? And why would Yahweh speak to someone beyond his chosen nation? The answers are both puzzling and enlightening. Yes, Balaam eventually shows himself to be covetous, arrogant, and ethically shaky. See 2 Peter 2:15 and Revelation 2:14. Yet his early actions still uncover an important truth. God was making himself known well outside Israel's frontiers. His name, words, and might reached even non-Israelite prophets. Remember, Balaam was not upright, but he was spiritually alert, and God decided to address him. And when King Balak pays Balaam to curse Israel, God transforms those curses into blessings. How can I curse whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce whom the Lord has not denounced? Numbers chapter 23, verse 8. Balaam even delivers striking prophecies about Israel's destiny, including a messianic glimpse. "I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel." Numbers chapter verse. Indeed, this imperfect outsider is chosen to reveal a prophecy pointing to Jesus, the future king. It's tangled and complex, but it highlights a vital truth. Yahweh's word isn't confined by place, parentage, or human schemes. Even when people attempt to use God for their own benefit, his plan stands firm. Balaam's tale reminds us that God has forever aimed worldwide. He was revealing himself long before Israel came into being, and he continues far beyond. The main question is, are we paying attention? After all we've learned, we have to wonder, why does this matter? Why is it significant that Yahweh was honored long before Israel by people like Job, Melchizedek, Jethro, Balaam, and more? Here's the answer. It shows us that God's love has always been for everyone, not a single tribe, one clan, or one land. Right from the start, Yahweh revealed himself to all who searched for him. From the rising of the sun to its setting, the name of the Lord is to be praised. Psalm 113, verse 3. He was at work in humble hearts, in overlooked places, inviting people to him long before any covenant was etched on stone. This tells us God's narrative is far larger than we imagine, and you, yes you, are included in it. Maybe you believed God only moves through specific individuals. Maybe you felt like you're on the fringe, or lack the proper background or customs. But here's reality. God notices you. He's been extending his hand long before you even thought to look for him, just as he did with Job, just as he joined Enoch, just as he summoned Abraham from a pagan land. He calls you now. And here's the wonder of the gospel. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Romans chapter 10, verse 13. That name is Yahweh, and in the New Testament, it's revealed in his Son, Yeshua, Jesus, whose name means Yahweh saves. So how will you respond to this mystery? Will you search for him, even if you stand beyond the usual limits? Will you heed his voice, as many did long before Israel existed? Will you answer the God who has been pursuing you through ages and lands? If these words touched you, feel free to share your thoughts. What amazed you the most? Do you still have questions on your mind? We'd love to hear your perspective and walk alongside you. And feel free to share this with someone who needs to know that God's love extends beyond anything we can imagine. Thank you for joining us as we uncovered a deeply overlooked truth in Scripture, the worship of Yahweh before Israel. And always remember, Yahweh's story didn't start with Israel, and it doesn't stop with you. It continues wherever a heart answers him. Until we meet again, stay inquisitive, stay steadfast, and remain grounded in the truth.